So let's take a look at what anarchy is. It's basically A without archy rule, without rule. Where there is chaos. Now, you take a look at middle school or some high school kids and they say, anarchy, great! Because anything that's Gothic, anything that's anti-authority, these kids are attracted to. So what you do is, you make it personal. You teach, for example, the word appropriate, which also starts with the letter A. You want something from your parents, but your parents are sort of angry at you. Is this a time that you're going to ask them for something? No, the timing's not right. It's not appropriate. You don't wear pajamas to school. Why not? Well, it's not appropriate. The point, of course, is what you do outside of our classroom, outside of our school, that's your business. But in our school, in our classroom, we simply do not have anarchy. And you make it personal. So let's assume we have anarchy, and someone steals your prized possession, your bike. What are you going to do? There's no police department to go to. There's no executive branch of the government to enforce any laws. There's no legislature to make any laws. There's no judicial branch of government to interpret laws. You're on your own. And all of a sudden, when anarchy becomes personal, it loses its attractiveness very, very rapidly. Now, what happens when there is anarchy? Someone is going to take control for charisma, for strength of personality, and that takes us to level B, which, by the way, you may be familiar with William Golding's Nobel Prize-winning book, Lord of the Flies. You recall there was a bunch of British schoolboys who were left on a deserted island. No adults around. No role models. And Jack and Ralph decided they were going to make the rules, and they became the bullies. That's where level A and level B comes from. It's just a natural social development. If there is anarchy, for some reason, someone is going to take control. And that person starts to make the rules. Hence level A and level B. Now both of these, and it's critical to understand this, are levels of behavior, both of which are unacceptable. Level C and level D, we'll talk about in a few minutes, are not about behavior, they're about motivation. Level A and level B are inappropriate. But notice, there's a choice that's built in, because they are two levels of inappropriate behavior. Now, I don't spend much time, once I teach the concepts, I don't spend much time talking about the difference between level A and level B. They're both inappropriate, and that's the point. Now, when you have a disrupting student, the youngster is making his or her own rules. They're bullying you and bullying the rest of the class. Now, most teachers don't think about that. But that's what the situation is. If someone is acting inappropriately, they're bullying you. Now, there are a number of ways to teach the different levels. For level A, one of the most impressive, so to speak, the one that's so easy to teach, is a book called Miss Nelson is Missing. Miss Nelson had the poorest class in the entire school. The kids were flying airplanes, they were rude, and Miss Nelson said, something has to be done. Miss Nelson didn't come to school the next day. There was a substitute teacher, Viola Swamp. And you can tell by looking at her that the kids, because of the authority, the kids straightened up. And it's a beautiful way to teach level A. If you're operating on level A, someone in authority is going to have you become more responsible. Basically, what Viola Swamp did is she bullied the kids. We don't usually think about this, but oftentimes the teacher is talking with a youngster in such a way that the kid feels bullied. And to go back to a very important point, how you feel has a definite relationship on how you act. If you feel bad, you're not going to spend much effort in learning because this bad feeling consumes you. Again, I'm not teaching anarchy. I'm not teaching bullying. I'm teaching levels of social and really personal development. Now, why am I doing this? There are a few reasons. The most important reason, however, is a thing called counterwill. Counterwill is the natural tendency to resist coercion or resist someone using authority on you in any way. You've heard of the terrible twos. You've heard of teenagers who rebel. In part, it's because of a power struggle. People, as well as adults, of course, resist being coerced. So, instead of talking about a youngster, what the youngster is doing, I totally bypass this idea of a youngster who's going to defend himself. Usually what happens is the teacher says something to the kid is going to defend himself. Anybody will. Richard Nixon lost his presidency because of it. Martha Stewart went to prison because of it. There was a natural human tendency to defend oneself. And one of the magical things about this hierarchy is you never talk to a kid about his behavior, so he doesn't have to self-defend. You totally bypass this so common approach of what starts out as a molehill ends up as a mountain because the teacher says something or the kid says something and they got aggravated, and you wind up with something that is absolutely unnecessary because of the basic idea that a kid, anyone, is going to self-defend. Using this approach totally bypasses that. Now, someone says, well, I'm not sure that anarchy is, that kids are going to understand it. Kids are like sponges. They understand everything. Many people have made the comment that they're not comfortable with the words. So they'll use pigeons and robins, or they'll use bananas and apples. If you use anything but these four words and what they stand behind, you're losing the strength, the empowerment that these four words have. Kids, as I mentioned, are like sponges. And people have written in, kids can learn these words very easily. Now, obviously, anarchy to a 3-year-old is going to be different than anarchy to a 17-year-old. But one of the beauties of the approach is every staff member can use it. And if the entire school teaches the levels of social development, even a noon monitor can go to a kid and say, what level is that? But I'm sort of getting ahead of myself. That's the second part. To put this in context, the first part is teaching the levels, which I'm spending time on because this is the only thing the kids have got to know. The second part is checking for understanding, and then we'll go into what happens if the kid really continues to act inappropriately. How do you handle that? And that's the reason why using this system, you can handle any discipline challenge. But let's get back to the basics here. We've talked about 2 levels that are unacceptable, level A and level B. Now we're going to go up the hierarchy to level C. Obviously, anarchy has no rules, and just as obvious is that I am not teaching anarchy. I am explaining the lowest level of how people act by discussing this level. I empower students by having them recognize a behavioral level that is not acceptable. This is the same approach used to empower students against bullying. Unfortunately, some people take the position that we should not talk about anarchy or bullying because they are negative. These people want only to talk about things that are positive. I understand this. The proof is that The first principle I practice is positivity. But my position is that if you want to empower young people about a problem, put it on the table. Talk about it, rather than sweeping the concept under the carpet. By the way, one of the books to illustrate level B is The Three Little Pigs, where the wolf is constantly bullying the pigs. Of both unacceptable levels, level A and level B, notice that level B has a gerund or a verbal ending, bullying. This is for two reasons. Number one, it prevents anyone calling someone a bully. And two, the verbal form indicates that the person is making a choice to behave at that level.